When designing a forest garden, we usually focus only on food plants. And yet, did you know that there are plants that aren't there to feed us, but only to work for us?
If you didn't know, you'll find out now, as that's our topic in this video.
These plants are what we call service plants, or AFE. I'll explain that to you in just a moment. These plants may not feed us directly, but they make our forest gardens more productive, lively, and resilient. And if you don't know what resilience is, it's simply your garden's ability to stay alive and healthy, no matter what happens. Alright, let's get started with this video. For those who don't know me, I'm a nurseryman specializing in garden and forest plants. Most people who buy plants from me usually ask for fruit plants or perennials. When I mention service plants, few people know about them, even though they're essential in gardens, forests, and vegetable patches. By the way, in this video, I'll discuss various plant groups and specific plants that benefit the garden. I'll also share plenty of resources, including charts, plant lists, and detailed sheets for each plant. And all of that, I'll talk about it at the end of the video to explain how you can get all these resources for free, of course. A quick word about vocabulary. I call them service plants because these are plants that aren't there to feed us directly, but rather to provide us with a service. But some forest garden professionals, like Fabrice Dejour, call these plants architectural, fertilizing, and engineering for architectural, fertilizing, and engineering. So these are plants that will influence the structure of the garden, its fertility, and help it develop. Another term they use, by the way, is sacrificial plants, since the goal of these plants in the long run isn't to stay in the garden, but rather to help it. And I'm going to share a quote from him that I really like. Architectural, fertilizing, and engineering plants shape landscapes much like adolescence shapes humans. And that really shows the role of these plants, and especially the period during which these plants are important in the development of a garden. Quick question, do you call them service plants, architectural, fertilizing, and engineering, or sacrificial plants? Do you have a preference, and why do you call them that? I prefer the term service plants, since it's easier for most people to understand. But I'm still going to use architectural, fertilizing, and engineering more and more, because I think this term is more precise about all the roles these plants can really have. That being said, I'm not sure this debate is that important. What really matters is knowing their importance and planting them in the garden.
Here's what they'll do. Affect soil fertility and quality, which influences your garden's productivity. They'll also increase biodiversity and boost pollinators.
That too will increase productivity. And by regulating the presence of pests, it will reduce losses and therefore also impact productivity. In the long run, a forest garden should still be very productive. These plants will mainly accelerate the processes that eventually get us there. Additionally, it impacts aesthetics, though I admit this is very subjective. And besides, it doesn't necessarily affect productivity. If your garden is prettier and more pleasant, you'll likely spend more time there. There's a good chance it will affect productivity. Now we're going to look a little more closely at what these plants actually do. And I'll even give you some examples if you want ideas for plants to add to your gardens. So the biggest point, it seems to me, is fertility. There are a lot of plants that affect fertility, and in several ways. There's a group that more and more of you are getting to know, and that's the group of legumes.
These plants have the ability to form associations at the root level, symbiosis with bacteria that are able to do what plants can do.
That is to convert nitrogen from the air into organic nitrogen.
So nutrition for the plants, which they give them directly in exchange for sugar. Among these legumes are trees like carrigan, bladder senna, honey locust, and Judas tree. These plants fertilize soil, and some are also edible. I said they're not always, but they can be. The Judas tree, its flowers are delicious. The carrigan, which is also called the Siberian pea shrub, produces fruits that are small beans you can eat when they're young, or you can collect the seeds, which look like small peas, when they're older. Legumes offer additional benefits too. There are also many plants that aren't necessarily perennial and woody, that aren't necessarily trees, but are more like annual crops. And so those ones we'll mostly use as green manure. Green manure crops are plants that we grow before food crops to really nourish the soil. That being said, green manure can have lots of different benefits, not just fertility. If you want more information about that, I'll put a link up there to a video I made about cover crops and green manure, which is much more comprehensive. So, in addition to legumes, there are other plants that also form root symbioses with bacteria. For example, we have alders, black alders, Corsican alders, and Elaeagnus. All this impacts fertility, especially nitrogen richness, but fertility involves more than that. We will also have plants with deep roots that will go deep into the soil to retrieve nutrients that might otherwise be washed away and lost.
Some plants have roots that reach deep into the soil.
These elements move into the leaves and branches, and by collecting this foliage we can enrich the soil. So we have a key plant like this. That's comfrey. It also serves as ground cover and benefits biodiversity. And then, when it grows well, you can occasionally collect the foliage, use it as mulch to feed the soil as it decomposes, or make liquid fertilizer or extracts for a strong boost in fertility. Sometimes too strong, but that's another issue. We often discuss comfrey, but we also grow cardoon, artichoke, mallow, and other deep-rooted plants with taproots. Among these plants we also have trees, but all trees have roots that go deep. And so by collecting the leaves and branches, whether it's dead winter leaves, cutting and shredding branches during the growing season, or using them as mulch, will add fertility. There's a very simple way to do this, which is to have hedges along the edge of the garden, or even hedges inside the garden. We regularly mow, trim, and bring this biomass into the garden. One of the concerns we might have with this way of doing things is that by constantly taking from the plants to bring it elsewhere, we could end up depleting that area. The trick is just to include in these plants some from the legume family or any other kind of plant, which form associations with bacteria at the roots and ensure the area is never depleted. So that's it for fertility, but we can also work with fertility and water resources. In other ways, we will have plants that help protect the soil, structure the soil, and loosen the soil. So, to loosen the soil, that will be all the plants with taproots. There's a wild one that we don't like very much. For example, Rumex has a taproot that loosens soil deeply, but any of the taproot plants I mentioned earlier will work. For that as well, we'll also have all the plants with fibrous root systems, which means a root system with lots of small roots going in all directions, and that will tend to structure the soil. Other plants that will affect soil quality are all the plants we call ground covers. We've seen comfrey, but also artichoke, cardoon, and rhubarb. All these plants with foliage that covers will keep the soil sheltered from the sun, keep the soil more moist, and therefore protect the soil. It's a more living soil, making it richer in resources and more fertile. There's another service plant I haven't mentioned yet, and it affects several things. It can be a ground cover, but ground cover can include trees like the Paulownia. To me, it's the record tree of our temperate regions and the fastest growing tree I know. It will double in size every year for the first few years, reaching up to 15 meters tall. Its leaves can grow up to 60 centimeters wide. It's the fastest, most productive plant I know of for biomass. You can plant it in your garden for quick shade. Each year you can prune branches and gather leaves to enrich the soil. Well, this one is so interesting that I'm making a video just about it very soon. Again, a quick note on ground cover plants. They make soil healthier and reduce your weeding. Covering soil also stops harder to control plants from appearing. Couch grass, cinquefoils, things like that. So that's what ground covers are for. They'll also save you work time and probably make you more productive. Maybe what I'm saying seems complicated. There are various root systems and associations to learn about, and it's not always easy to know which plants might be missing from your gardens. Here's a helpful trick. The more you mix different plants, the more likely you'll have everything you need. It's unlikely that by planting 10 different types of plants in your vegetable areas and borders, you wouldn't get a variety of root systems acting differently on the soil. It'll be more interesting overall. Start by mixing plants. That works. Then take your time learning the rest. Many service plants affect biodiversity, which in turn strongly impacts productivity. Like I said, it can attract pollinators. So the goal is to plant flowers that bloom and keep blooming. So you should plant several types that bloom at different times. Usually in spring we have what we need, but in the middle of summer it's more difficult, and in the middle of winter it's not always easy either. So notice when your garden has fewer blooms and add plants that flower then. That way you can keep pollinators around as much as possible throughout the year. In the resources I'm going to share with you, you'll find a table on nectar-producing plants, among other things. Having dense and diverse vegetation will also help support biodiversity. It will be a place where birds can build their nests, and there will be hollow stems where insects can spend the winter or reproduce. Having plants that attract and host aphids, and having as many of them as possible throughout the year, will also allow aphid predators, your beneficial insects, to be present all year round as well. And that's the goal, just in a different way. We're going to have all the aromatic plants which, by releasing their scents, will somewhat disturb certain insects and limit their development. It won't stop pest insects from finding the plants they feed on or from finding their mates to reproduce. But it will limit and regulate things a little bit. Well, and indirectly it also has an impact on the aesthetic side of the garden and on the productivity of aromatic plants. So there you go. In any case, it's not uninteresting to put them in, that's all. In any case, it shows one thing. The garden is complex. It's a very diverse ecosystem. And the goal of a garden, of a forest garden, is really to model itself on nature. Since nature works without us needing to add fertilizer, water it, maintain it, or do anything at all. It's a stable, productive ecosystem, so we aim to model ourselves after it. And so to do that, we'll need to put in lots of different things, lots of different plants, and not just plants that we want to harvest for food. Sometimes it's good to think beyond yourself and consider your garden, its biodiversity and soil. If you don't do it, it will stop working, so do it, and your garden will reward you. Alright, I'll wrap up with 2 questions. Did you know that? Did you know about this concept of service plants or AFI, and now that you know about it? Which plants do you already have in your gardens and which would you like to add? Just so you know, I have several here at the nursery if you're nearby. We're now open every Saturday from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m, so feel free to come and see everything we have. I said I'd share various resources with you. So almost everything is free. The only thing that might not be free is if you want to buy this book. This is my first book. And at the end of this book, you already have some tables, some lists of plants, nitrogen fixing plants, different things. You can also find this information on the internet. There's no problem with that. Why? I'm telling you about this mainly to promote my book a little. Suppose I wrote this book with the publisher Terre Vivante. I gave them lists of tables to include in the appendix. Huge tables that didn't fit in the book because the tables were maybe a bit too big, a bit too complete, so these tables couldn't be included in the book. That's where it starts to get interesting. I made them freely available on my website. So you go to the website, to the My Shares tab and the Documents sub-tab, and then to this Documents page. You'll find plenty of other things you can download in addition to these tables. I won't list everything since there are so many. But among the things you can find, you have, in particular, the list of melliferous plants. This is the table I mentioned earlier. It's about 15 pages long. So here I'm also going to do a little bit of promotion. You'll have all the lists that are available at our nursery. We're open every Saturday afternoon, but the thing that might be interesting for you is that for the nursery, we made labels, little posters for each plant on which you have a whole bunch of information each time about each plant. And well, these little posters, these little signs, they are available for download, so go check the list of available plants, and some plants are shown in bold and the plants that are shown in bold. These are the plants we've made information sheets for. We're still working on them, but the completed ones, shown in bold, are available. Click the name to download the sheet automatically. So what you can do is, once you've downloaded these sheets, look at them, read them, and give me your feedback on them. Does the sheet seem correct to you, or would you have liked to find more information on it? Just so you know, normally the sheets are pretty complete. There is all the information about the plant, how it can be used, how to grow it, how to propagate it, and how to place it in the garden. Forest good. In short, you'll see there is quite a lot of interesting information, so there you go. And all of this is free. So happy downloading to everyone, and I hope all of this has been useful to you. If that's the case, let me know in the comments. Give it a thumbs up. It's always nice for me. For better visibility, share the video with others and subscribe to the channel. That's helpful. And what's even nicer, if you want, is to support me financially. You can do that through the Typee platform. The link is up there. Thank you to everyone who will help and support me making this possible. Hi everyone, come on, I'm going to plant you.